Outside by Jennifer L. Holm. First chapter Friday, read aloud video, and author interview with the Word Nerd. Today, as you listen, play along. Watch for the story quote that will appear on screen. Write it down, word by word, and then follow the instructions given to you by your teacher. Be sure to stay all the way to the end to see if you've written it down correctly. Teachers, press pause and ask your students to take a look at the images circled on screen. I've got worksheets that accompany this video down in the video description box if it's helpful for you. As a group, take a few minutes to make a prediction. What do you think this story is going to be about based on the images that you see? One last thing before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Merklowitz's students in Houston, Minnesota. I'm so excited you guys are here today and hope you love this story and interview. Happy listening! Hi, my name's Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week we're going to be reading from Outside by Jennifer L. Holm. Now, if you liked this book, The Wrong Way Home by Kate O'Shaughnessy, there is a strong connection between the topic of this book and the topic of this book, and so I'm guessing that if you are a fan of this, you'll also be a fan of this. Let me tell you what the story is about by reading you the back, and then we will dive into chapter 1, and make sure you stick around after that because we're going to have a chance to talk with the author, Jennifer L. Holm. Whatever you do, don't leave home. Razzi has always been told, don't go outside. It isn't safe. There are people and creatures out there that will harm you. The walls of the refugee will protect you from them. Razzi's friend Ollie was curious about the outside, and it led to his death. So Razzi's trying to be on her best behavior. She's the oldest kid left and the one the younger kids look up to. She has to follow the rules. But outside has a way of getting in, and Razzi, guided by a dog she has a strangely close connection with, wonders what it's like to run free beyond the walls. As she steps away from everything she's ever known, what will she find? Whew, you guys, this is a real page turner and full of so many interesting, unique things that I have never seen in a book before. So if you're a curious kind of kid who wants something just a little bit different, you are going to love this book. Let's dive into chapter 1 of Outside by Jennifer L. Holm. Chapter 1 is called Razzi. I dreamt I was running outside. Ancient trees with sprawling branches towered above me. Patches of little purple flowers were scattered here and there. Fruit hung from the trees, lemons and bananas and bunches of purple grapes. I grabbed a ripe peach and took a bite. It was juicy and sweet, sweeter than any peach I'd ever eaten before. There were animals in my dreamscape too, deer and scampering squirrels and a whole family of red foxes that tussled and played with me. Of course, I'd never actually been outside. I had never left the refuge. This is what I imagined the outside to look like, based on details I'd learned from reading books and watching old movies. Up ahead, miles of blue water spread out before me. My very own ocean. Dolphins leapt into the air and penguins sunbathed along the shore. Suddenly, a whale appeared. A spray of water burst from its blowhole and showered down on me. Drip, drip, drip. I blinked myself awake and touched my face. It was wet. Drip. I clicked on my bedside light and looked up at the damp patch in the ceiling. The roof was leaking again from all the rain. It didn't seem fair. I couldn't go outside. The outside had managed to get in. Breakfast was in the ballroom. That's where we had all our meals. The formal dining room was too small to fit everyone. Instead, it was our makeshift school. I liked the ballroom. It was big and beautiful. Mama told me that it was where people used to dance. I sometimes imagined ladies in long, flowing dresses twirling beneath glittering chandeliers. Today's meal was ham and hash brown potatoes. I hated ham. I hated everything about it. The rubbery texture, the pale pink color, the glistening fat. Most of all, I hated the smell. But canned ham was easy to come by during raids. It was the cockroach of meats. It had survived the end of the world. We had it a lot, unfortunately for me. So I did what I always did. I served myself a big plate of hash brown potatoes. The grown-ups had set up several tables and chairs across the marble floors. They didn't usually sit with us at meals. They sat at their own big table. Papa liked to use these times to go over security issues with the other grown-ups. Mary, Mateo, and Bing were already sitting at the blue table when I walked over with my plate. It was a holdover from when we were little. They had divided us kids up and we lived in hallways that were painted different colors. There was green and blue. I was a blue kid like Mary and Bing and Mateo. Sure, everyone played together and learned together and did chores together, but for some reason we always fell back into our old color groups at mealtimes. It was just easier, I guess. There was no fighting, no trying to impress someone else or jostle for attention. No ham, Razzi? Bing asked, bouncing on his seat. Bing was 7 and had skinny legs and arms and could never sit still. Mama called him her little tornado because he was always in motion. He was the youngest blue and my annoying little brother. You know me, I said. You hate ham, right, Razzi? Bing asked. Right. Mama just went to the kitchen to get muffins, Bing said. What kind of muffins? Mateo asked, his eyes peeking out from beneath his long, dark bangs. Chocolate chip, Bing exclaimed. I grinned. I loved chocolate. Chocolate again, Mary complained, rolling her eyes. Ugh. Mateo and Mary were 11-year-old twins, but they were complete opposites. Where Mateo was quiet and easygoing, Mary complained about everything. From her room, it was the biggest, to her wardrobe, she had way more clothes than me. She would probably complain if unicorns showed up and gave us bags of candy. I'm so excited, Bing said, bouncing in his chair. It's hand-me-down night. Once a year, all 6 of us kids got together and handed down clothes that no longer fit. Over the years, instead of just handing down clothes, we started to hand down personal belongings too. Toys, comics, stuff like that. Since Bing was the youngest kid at the Refuge, it was almost like a second birthday celebration for him. Hey, Razzi, Mary said with a sly look. I think you should hand down your beanbag to me. I snorted, shaking my head. My beanbag was my favorite possession in the world. It was big and orange, and when you sat in it, it felt like you were being hugged. Aren't you getting a little big for the beanbag? Mary asked, prodding me. I was 12, but since when was there an age limit on beanbags? No, I said. I think it will look better in my room. I don't, I said. It might look better in Mary's room, Bing chimed in. She has that empty space in the corner. Then give her your beanbag, I suggested. He looked confused. But I don't have one. Mateo interrupted. Guys, he said in his usual blunt way, what do you think will happen to Ollie's stuff? We all stared at each other, silent. I had no idea what would happen to Ollie's stuff, because Ollie was dead. It's sad, Bing said with the bluntness of a little kid. Sad was such a small word for such a big and terrible feeling. Sad didn't begin to describe the gaping hole that Ollie had left behind. I looked over at his old table, the green table. Ray and Neela didn't talk. Instead, they stared at their plates and half-heartedly picked at their food. I couldn't begin to imagine how Ray and Neela felt. Ollie had been the eldest Green at 12, followed by Ray at 11 and Neela at 8. The Greens had been the smaller group with just 3 kids, but now there were only 2. My stomach churned. It was all my fault. If only I'd told the grown-ups, if only I'd done something different, if only... Maybe we should invite them to sit at our table from now on, Mateo suggested. Sure, I said. Mateo had a big heart. I don't want to read today, Mary complained. We kids had a fixed schedule at the Refuge. The grown-ups believed that children needed consistency. There was breakfast, then we did school, reading and writing and math with Jaya. She was the only grown-up who had the same job in the Refuge as she had in the before time. Jaya had been a professor and had taught something called Shakespeare. Next was life lessons. After that was lunch, then chores, then play, then dinner. There's your mom with the muffins, Mateo said, pointing across the room to where my mother walked through the large arched doorway carrying a platter. Bing jumped up. Me first, he said. But before he could take a step, we heard it. Chuff, chuff, chuff. Something roared overhead and we all froze. The sound was terrifying. Chuff, chuff, chuff. Ben! Mama cried, the platter tumbling from her hands. Ben was my father. Papa leapt up from the grown-ups' table and shouted, Searcher! Everything happened at once. We scrambled out of our chairs and under the table. Papa called this duck and cover. Someone hissed, Quiet! And the sound of the searcher filled the air. Chuff, chuff, chuff. I crouched beneath the table holding still. I knew they couldn't see us. All the windows in the building had been boarded up long ago by the old owner to keep the poisoned out. But Papa worried that they might be able to hear us somehow. Chuff, chuff, chuff. It sounded like it was flying slowly over us. Had we finally been discovered? My heart pounded at the thought. We'd been safe for all these years. There hadn't been a searcher in ages. I'm scared, Bing whined. Come here, I said. He fell into my lap and buried his face in my long, curly hair. I'd always hated my hair. The curls were so frizzy, but I knew Bing found it comforting. It'll be okay, I whispered. He shook in my arms, and I knew he was crying. I kind of felt like crying, too. The Great Poisoning had been over a decade ago. Countries around the world had abandoned nuclear weapons in the name of peace, but some stupid country decided to start a war anyway and used a space weapon that showered poison down from the sky. Most living things, people and animals, had died from the initial attack. Searchers looked for survivors, and then, it was rumored, killed them. Do you think the searchers spotted us? Mateo asked in a low voice. Papa had always sworn that we'd be safe here in the refuge, and I believed him. Even if I was scared, I knew I had to be brave for the others. I was the first, the oldest kid in the refuge. It was my job to guide the other kids to make good choices. Not that Ollie had ever really listened to me. He said that just because I was 2 months older than him, it didn't make me any smarter. But I was good at being first. I took it seriously because Papa said survival was serious. It'd been drilled into me from a young age to be calm and comforting and responsible. I listened to the grown-ups. Unlike Ollie, he'd always pushed the boundaries, got in trouble. Why had he been that way? Chuff, chuff, chuff. Razzi, Bing whined. Shh, we're safe, I whispered. Why is it here? Mateo whispered back. I shook my head. I don't know. Slowly, the whir, whir, whir sound grew more distant. I held my breath and waited, hoping this meant the searcher was moving away and not coming back. Bing whimpered in my arms. After what felt like forever, Papa shouted, Clear! We crawled out from underneath the tables and stood around, blinking in the bright light. I felt shaky and out of sorts, like someone had woken me up in the middle of a bad dream. Everyone okay? I asked my blue crew. Mateo nodded, and Bing gave a bright smile. I almost forgot about the muffins, Bing said and dashed away. Mary turned to me. I'm not okay. Oh, I said, confused. Can I do anything? She blinked dramatically. I'd feel a whole lot better if you gave me your beanbag. I rolled my eyes. If you want to find out what happens next in Outside, definitely pick up a copy. But now let's go chat with the author, Jennifer L. Holm. All right, readers, we are in for a treat today. We're going to get the chance to talk with Jenny Holm about her newest book, Outside, which we've just listened to chapter 1 of. Jenny, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh my goodness, it is my pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so this book is a little different. It's about some things that maybe kids haven't read about before. And so I'm curious, what was the story Spark or Seedling? Like what kicked this book journey off for you?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story from my childhood, actually. So I grew up in a really big family. I'm one of five, and there's quite a
Okay.
large age group. So my eldest brother, Keith, he is 12 years older than me. So when I was just a little kinder, he graduated high school and he joined the Navy, and I was completely bewildered. One day my favorite big brother was in the house, and the next day he was gone. And I didn't understand. And my parents kept saying, "Oh, he's in the Navy, he's in the Navy." And I could not comprehend what was the Navy, where was the Navy, where was he sleeping, where was he eating. I was like so worried. And I guess I was completely driving my parents nuts, asking them incessantly where Keith went. And so one day, my dad is driving us through this corporate park where his office building was actually, and he points to this big red brick building and he says, "Jenny, that's the Navy. That's where Keith is living, and he is fine, and you don't need to worry about it anymore, honey." And I was like completely and totally relieved. Well, it turns out that building was just a IBM building, And but for a few years there, I legit thought my brother Keith was living in this building in town, but he would not mysteriously come home for dinner. And of
Yeah.
course, years later, I figured out that my dad was, he was soft peddling the truth to
Yes.
comfort the kids, and it even became like this total family joke every time we drove by it, like, "Hey, that's the Navy. That's where Keith lives." I mean, in
Yeah.
real life, he was stationed in Alaska, actually. So it was kind of, years later, I thought, wow, what if like there were a bunch of like kids living in that building and we never even knew they were there all these
Yeah.
years. So that was the funny spark, kind of a soft prank played on me by my dad all those years ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are all those things that we tell our kids. For the longest time, my kids believed that the windows on the car would not go up or down if we were going more than 30 miles an hour or if it was raining outside. The car just wouldn't let that happen.
Exactly.
Um, and then when they got the power to push the button themselves, they were like, "What?" So yeah, it's not that we're trying to be unkind or not truthful in a hurtful way, but that is really the premise of this book. And so I'm curious about the research that you did for this story because it is a fictional story, it's made up, but
Yeah.
I'm guessing that you did do some research on some of the topics related to the story. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I love research. I started off my writing career writing specifically just historical fiction. So that's like obviously a crazy deep dive down rabbit holes into the past. I find it actually it's a little harder to do research for speculative, or we might say this is science fiction, dystopian fiction, because you have to almost think through the possibilities. So I mean, I know you set the scene in the chapter that you've read the children in the audience, but trying to figure out how do you survive in a post dystopian world? What are the specific things you would really need? So I did kind of have to do a little bit of research on that, like how would you survive without, say,
Mhm.
normal food supply, regular electricity, that kind of thing.
Yeah, really interesting. Um, that leads really nicely into my next question, which is that you've written a lot of books. How many are you up to now?
I think but with my brother Matt and I think we're over 60-ish.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I know.
Congratulations. That's amazing. But they're all like they're kind of scattered across age ranges and they're scattered across genres and they're even scattered across formats. And
Yeah.
so I'm curious if you have one that you like that's really like your heart, that's your favorite, um, and or that maybe feels a little bit easier to write than the others.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have, I've bounced around in genres. I think part of that is just is getting old. As you get older, you want to try new things. You're less nervous about venturing out. I would say my heart is still with graphic novels. So I collaborate with my youngest brother Matt on the Baby Mouse series, the Squish series, and the Sunny series. And usually people fixate on the fact that, oh, you're brother and sister, you must fight all the time when you're writing the books. But the fact is, it's much easier to collaborate on a project than to write it by yourself. Writing just a standalone chapter book like Outside, Line of Mars, 14th Goldfish can be satisfying, but it can be incredibly lonely because it's just you in your office. And I love being able to, when I get stuck, when I'm writing a graphic novel, I can just, text my brother and say, I need a joke, or this isn't working. What do you suggest? So it's just, and I think that is true in life. And mostly in life, we're going to be collaborating with other human beings in our
Mhm.
jobs. So I think it's normal.
Yeah. As with everything, like life is more fun with friends. So,
Yes.
and I love that you guys get to do that together. How fun.
Yeah, it's
Um,
good.
Okay, so my next question is that there is a dog in this book that is very important.
I know.
But on your website, it says that you have three cats. And so I'm curious if it was tricky for you to become a dog person in this story. And I know that cats can be, the people who watch my channel know that I am not an animal lover, and they still choose to be friends with me. Um, but I'm guessing about this, but I think that cats kind of sometimes have like a persnickety personality. And
Yes.
so like, were they mad at you for writing a dog into the story?
Yes. Our cats are very cats. They have their own opinions, and
Mhm.
they will come to you and play with you if they deign to, enter the space. I did have childhood dogs, but really the dog that was the inspiration for this book, it's a bit of a tragic story. So our best family friends, they're a couple our age, and they had gotten this beautiful little dog named Poppy. And Poppy was kind of about yay big, like a mini. I'm not good on dog breeds, but it was kind of like a chaser dog, like
Mhm.
a herding
Terrier?
dog. She was a little
Okay.
herder, and she was the most fascinating dog I've ever met in my life. She was so smart. She was like a little human. She would sit, she would almost like talk to you. She just followed her mom around like a child. And I've literally never met a dog that was more like had a human soul.
Yeah.
And I think what really had a profound effect on me and everybody was that she got into a car accident when she was just a puppy and passed away.
Mhm.
And watching my friends, that entire family grieve for this dog, it was like literally watching a child die. It was heartbreaking. It was so heartbreaking that even when we talk about her today, it's a couple of years later, like we all tear up like about
Yeah.
Poppy because she was like a little human. So that really stuck in my head how I know people joke about their fur babies and they're part of the family, and of course they are, but really watching the devastation of grief just really affected me.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
sad.
hopefully your cats will forgive you for giving the spirit of Poppy a place in this book.
I
My
know.
last question for you is what do you hope readers will take with them after they are done reading outside?
I think the one thing is I hope they go outside. So I
Yeah.
feel like a part of the other reason I wrote this book is that, I grew up in the 1970s, and kids in the 1970s, we didn't have devices, we didn't have computers, we didn't have iPhones or cell phones or Nintendo DSs. We barely had color television. So we literally lived outside from morning till night. Our entire existence, my entire childhood was outside of the house. And obviously, this generation of kids, you guys are a little bit different. And I'm a mom and I've watched my own kids grow up more inside. So kind of hope that kids spend a little physical time out under the big blue sky. But I also hope that they're more curious and they question the adults in their life. I think that's a good thing to be very curious about the world around you.
Absolutely. And this book definitely poses that question. And I don't think it will be hard for them to think about that as they leave this story. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for this great book. Thank you for all of the amazing books that you have written. I always like to finish by asking, so I suppose there's one more question. If a reader has a question that I didn't ask you that they're still curious about, where is a great place for them to get a hold of you? And then also, if you want to tell us what you're publishing or working on next, we'd love to hear about that too.
Awesome. Yeah. So I have a website, which is www.jenniferholm.com, but I'm on the Insta at Jennifer L. Holm. So you can put a question on my Instagram. And what are we working on next? So Matt and I are finishing or in the art stage of the new Sunny book. It's called Sunny Hits the Road. Sunny and her family they rent a old school, Winnebago camper van, and it's a summer vacation trip, and they go on a road trip, and hilarity ensues. So Matt is quickly drawing that right now as we speak. So that should
That
be out
is
in maybe
awesome.
in a year or two. It's hard to say. So, but not
Yeah,
far.
graphic novels take so much longer.
I know. It's a slog. It's a slog. Yeah.
It is. Well, we will look forward to that when it comes out. And readers, we will see you here again next time for another First Chapter Friday video. Happy reading!
Bye. Thank you so much.
This week's mystery quote says, "If you step away from everything you've ever known, what will you find?" To continue reading Outside by Jennifer L. Holm, pick up a copy from your school library, purchase one from your favorite local indie bookstore, or grab it via the link in the video description box. Hey, one more thing before I let you go. I want to give a shout out to Scholastic and say thanks for sending me a copy of this book and for sponsoring this video. I'm so grateful for all the work you do for literacy, for schools, for teachers, and for students. Finally, I want to remind you that I've got more than 200 First Chapter Friday Read Aloud videos just like this one, many of them with author interviews, and they're all waiting for you to check out on my channel. Thanks so much for visiting Learning with the Word Nerd. I hope you come back again. Please like this video and subscribe. See you again next time.